RMJ Movie Reviews back again with my surprise movie review of Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone and Brigitte Nielsen from 1986, directed by George Cosmatos. Cobra came out during the phase of Stallone's career. He had just finished Rocky IV, I believe, a year before, and he was married to Brigitte Nielsen after meeting her, I believe, on Rocky IV. And he also got her the job on Beverly Hills Cop 2, which, in retrospect, the movie Cobra was actually, I believe, based on a novel called Fair Game, which later became the Cindy Crawford, William Baldwin bomb, which I really love, called Fair Game. Has a similar plot. A lot of the structure and story elements of this, the harder, darker action elements, were meant for Beverly Hills Cop. The producers rejected it, and it turned into Stallone morphing it into his own little project, which was Cobra here. This was actually a $25 million budget, and it was a very financially successful. It made I believe, $160 million. I mean, that's a financial success. Of course, it was a critical failure. And the reason it was a critical failure is because, plain and simple, Cobra is critic proof. Even as a little kid, I was never particularly a big fan of Cobra. Upon rewatching it now as an adult, I fully appreciate it for what it is. And like I said, it's a critic-proof movie. Stallone is a cop called, his name is Marion Cobretti, so he goes by Cobra, and he has, I believe it's a 45 that has a Cobra on the side of it. And he has all these quippy little one-liners and things like that. It's also a hybrid of the cliches of the 80s action tough guy movie, with slasher elements into it. And the slasher, the night slasher, is played by Brian Thompson of Fright Night Part 2 fame. The thing about Cobra is the fact that it's a hybrid of a picture, action picture, slasher picture, along with all the cliches of the time. It really lent itself to a high level of criticism, not to mention the fact that you had the behind-the-scenes drama of Stallone being married to Brigitte Nielsen, which everybody just had it out for her. Stallone was a writer on this, and allegedly, he was a ghost director on this film as well, a la Poltergeist 1982 style. This is just one big, fun 80s cliche. He has these tinted, or they're not tinted, but they're like reflective sunglasses, and it's the shot that everybody remembers where Stallone gets out the car and it's a tight shot of his face with the match in his mouth. That's a spectacular shot. I think if you take this film seriously, you will be highly upset. But if you take it for what it is, which is a action slasher picture, you will fully enjoy it. Are the performances worth writing about? Absolutely not. I don't think anybody had time for that. Stallone realized at this point that this is a business. This is an audience-friendly movie. It is made for the bloodthirsty, howling young males of the 1980s. The action in this thing is great. Particularly, I do remember when I was a young child seeing the film that I always loved that car chase with this antique older car, and it's got the nitro engine to it, and Stallone kind of spins it around. He does like a 180 and shoots at the bad guys, and then he spins it back around another 180 and drives forward. He goes through a parking garage and drives from the upper level through the fence back onto the street from the second level of the parking garage. Really cool action sequence, and it's fun. It's really fun. It also takes advantage of the thing that was popular on the television series Miami Vice, and they did it in Rocky IV. There's a musical montage, where there's just the cheesy 80s music playing over the cops doing their investigating, and the Night Stalker is looking for Brigitte Nielsen because Brigitte Nielsen witnessed one of their murders. And Brian Thompson here, who I believe he was based on the very horrific, disgusting Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, who was a string of very horrifically violent murders during the 80s. It just, unspeakable acts of horror. This night slasher character is based on that, and Brian Thompson is extremely creepy. I mean, he is skin-crawlingly scary. But what they did was they kind of transformed it and kind of made him Manson-esque. So he has like an army of killers, and they kind of sit in a room with axes, with, you know, Ricky's axe from Silent Night, Deadly Night, and they just go This is about the cliches of shooting bloodthirsty bad guys, pyrotechnics and explosions, and Stallone having a stone face and doing it in a cool, dirty, hairy kind of way. Brigitte Nielsen's job is to run and scream. They do have a brief romance. There is no chemistry in my personal opinion, but I will say, upon rewatching this movie again, I was very distracted by her red wig. But I do think it makes her look pretty cute. She's pretty hot with red hair. You know, I wasn't a fan of the bald-headed Jada Pinkett Demon Knight bleach blonde thing in Beverly Hills Cop 2. But I think she's very pretty. And it's also funny, too, that she's so much taller than Stallone. And you can see how the shots are made where, like, they kind of try to not show that she's taller than him, and she wears flat shoes and things like that. But it's, you know, it's funny. One thing I always remembered about this movie was, number one, the opening sequence with the gun pointing at the camera and the bullet coming out, but Brian Thompson saying, "They'll call me insane, pig, even though I have rights." I mean, I never forgot that. And him throwing him on the hook. And I'll tell you one thing, I just must say, I'm a Stallone fan. I was always more of an Arnold fan during the 80s, but I never believed that Stallone could beat Brian Thompson. I just never believed it. Now, towards the end of the fight, he's pistol whipping him with the gun. Maybe that's the only way he could have got the upper hand. But I'm sorry, I just don't believe that Stallone could physically handle Brian Thompson. I just don't believe it. He's too threatening of a villain. Really scary, creepy villains, and it shows a really darker side of Los Angeles that you didn't really see in movies at the time. You know, it really shows kind of the underbelly of Los Angeles, which Beverly Hills Cop and all those movies did not show. And this is a very dark film, and I think if you cut your brain off and enjoy the stunts and enjoy the creepy villains and the 80s soundtrack with the practical stunts, and all the stunts are just fantastic. And of course, one of the most memorable death scenes for a villain of all time. And then, Stallone saying, "This is where the law stops and I start." Fantastic. Fantastic. So keep your tongue firmly in cheek and you will enjoy Cobra for what it is. One big giant Five Guys double cheeseburger. Thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video. Don't forget to hit the bell and leave comments down below about Cobra or anything that I might have left out about the behind the scenes details. And if you don't like cheeseburger, bad for your heart and bad for your mind action pictures of the 1980s, why don't you go ahead and watch The Bridges of Madison County? RMJ Movie Reviews. I'll see you soon.